This is The Runwave, candid chats with real runners about topics that affect the running community. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Runwave Podcast. I am your host, Kim. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the show. If you are a return listener, welcome back to the show. I know it's been a minute, but I'm so happy that you are riding out with me. This is the last episode of 2021, and what a year of running it has been. It's actually been a year of non-running for me, but I know a lot of people have been trying to get back into the groove of things, doing more races in 2021. So it was nice to see us come out of this little funk of 2020 that we have been in and getting back on the road in 2021. And hopefully 2022 is going to bring back, I don't know, not complete normalcy because we're in a new normal at the moment, but hopefully it brings something new and exciting for us runners for the 2022 running season. So if you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. All you have to do is log in, hit subscribe, and you'll be notified each and every time I upload a new episode. You can also go to therunwave.com and a pop-up will appear on your screen. You can put in your email address, and I will also send you an email every time I upload a new episode so you don't miss any Runwave news. On today's show, we're talking all about the World Marathon Majors. I know in the last few years, the majors have become very popular. So I am chatting with who to me, I think is like an expert on the topic, Mr. Robert Wang. He has a Facebook group called World Marathon Majors Challenge, and there's over 17,000 members in that group. And to me, he's the authority on everything World Marathon Major. He knows how to get in, the tricks, the trades, all the good stuff. So he is going to give you all of his tips on how you can prepare to get into the World Marathon Majors, what you can do, what races are good for charity runners, what races are good for lottery. So he gives us all the details, and he is a wealth of information. So let's get into the interview. All right. So please welcome what I consider the expert on the World Marathon Majors, Robert Wang, to the Runway Podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Kimberly.
How are you?
Good. We just spent like 20 minutes trying to figure out how to connect to the Zoom. So
we did spend a little bit of time.
Right. I'm not a Zoom expert.
Zoom can be temperamental at times, but we got it going. We're here and we're ready to roar. So how were your holidays? How were your holidays?
It was fine. I ran 12 miles yesterday, and I ran nearly 6 miles on Christmas morning, and I got accosted by someone who recognized one of my videos from YouTube.
Really?
Or he recognized me from one of my videos on YouTube. Yes, I was just try to say this briefly. I was running like, I don't know, half a mile from my home, and this guy yells, "Merry Christmas! Hey, Robert Wang, I know you from Boston Squeakers." And he's driving in his car, and it's like, I think it was like 9 a.m. I had to make a work assignment, so I was trying to squeeze a run in. So I wasn't eager to chat with anyone. And he actually parked his car in this park that I was running by, and he got out and started running with me. Oh, but basically he had seen I put up this video about my virtual Boston Marathon in September of 2020, and he said he had seen that, and then he was going to be doing Disney, and so that was a little strange to me. That doesn't happen that often.
Well, you're sort of like a marathon major celebrity. I mean, like everyone who's running the majors knows who you are. Not
everyone, but
I mean, you have a Facebook group that has 17,000 people in it. So a large majority of distance runners know who Robert Wang is. I can't believe that's the first time anyone's called you out on the street.
you know, like I can be amazing. I can be anonymous in many situations. Like I went to Disney World in November. No one recognized me there. I would actually, I remember, I went to, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I went to, you probably are aware of it. I went to New York.
Yes.
I did not announce that I was going to be there in advance in the group. And so I went there and I was pretty anonymous. I went to go pick up my Abbott Dash to the Finish Line 5K bib. No one really recognized me there. And I went to the expo and no one really recognized me there either. So it just depends. I mean, in London and Boston, I was getting stopped constantly. In New York, you know, on the Friday I arrived, not so much. I did go to Times Square to meet some people to shoot the video. Most of them did not know I was going to be there as part of shooting a video. But except for that, like no one, you know, so it just varies. Sometimes I get at some races I'll get stopped, and others no one knows who I am. So it really depends.
I'm going to get into your background, but you mentioned New York City Marathon. So what did you think about the Marathon Expo this year? Because it was a little bit different than previous. It was the same, but a little bit different. So what did you think?
They had this, as you know, they had this system where you had to sign up for a time, and there were not as many people as a typical New York City Marathon before, obviously. There was almost no crowds there. I mean, they were trying to control crowds to prevent anyone from getting COVID. There were probably fewer vendors there. I mean, I didn't think it was that horrible. I mean, the Expo store looked okay for the New Balance Expo store. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of reflective of the times. And I think Boston Marathon Expo, I think it's not going to be the full scale expo that people were used to from 2019 and before.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the New York City Marathon Expo looked the same, just visually wise, but I think that a lot of, like you said, vendors were missing. And I mean, I like to go there and collect all the freebies, you know, like the free food, you get your Gatorade, your goose, and like all that was all missing. There was like nothing there for that. And, you know, the timing where they had I wasn't a runner, I was a spectator this year. So, you know, I was able to walk right in. So I don't think that they were really honoring the times. So I guess it was like an honor system. You were supposed to go for the time that you signed up. And, you know, I thought it was a little strange. I don't know how it was at Boston, but did you go across the street and see how they had like the people that weren't vaccinated, they had to check in outside?
I did not check that out. I heard about it. I'm trying to remember. I know someone who did it, and I'm trying to remember what she said about it. I don't think there was I'm not sure. It didn't sound like there was a huge crowd of people waiting for that.
It was like the dead zone. It was like where you go for the expo to die. It was terrible. It was like in a back side street, and it was just really bad. I felt bad for the people that had to go there to pick up their bibs because they really missed out on, you know, the whole expo experience, which is, you know, the times that we live in. If you're not vaccinated, there are different rules, unfortunately, today.
I mean, I don't think it was intentional at all by New York Roadrunners to give people that feeling. But yeah, if you're not vaccinated and you're told you're not allowed in the building, you got to go to the side, you got to kind of pick up your bib, you know, from the trunk of a guy's car, you know, parked.
That's what it felt like. That is what it felt like.
I mean, it wasn't like that. Okay, I'm exaggerating.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. I wish I would have took a picture because it was literally a back alley. It was like a side street. It looked like it was like a parking lot that was unpaved and like the gravel was on the floor. And it was just like an outside setup. I mean, I just felt bad. If it was your first New York City Marathon and you came to that, it kind of like ruined the expo experience for some people, I think.
I could totally see that. You know, but I understand, you know, like the city of New York has a rule. If you're not vaccinated, you can't go into the Javits Center. The city of New York owns the Javits Center. It's their rules. And unfortunately, yes, it did. I'm sure it made many unvaccinated people feel stigmatized because of it. And, you know, obviously it's not the greatest feeling. And obviously next year, for every New York Roadrunners race, including the New York City Marathon, you have to be vaccinated. There's not going to be the guy handing out bibs from the vehicle in the side street by the Javits, and you know they're not going to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And you might have to get a booster shot. You know, I could be wrong on this, but I just have a feeling that that's going to come down, that we're going to have to have booster shots too, and in addition to the first 2 shots.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're changing the rules. I just read an article yesterday about what fully vaccinated means. Like, does it mean you have the 2 shots and the booster? Is it going to be 2 shots and 2 boosters? So, yeah, I wasn't surprised. I knew it was coming that New York Road Runners would require vaccinations. I didn't think that they were required for all of their races, even like the little 5K and 10K. So it's going to be interesting I'm in New York, so I'll be doing a few of their races this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, our COVID era racing.
Well, the thing is, here's the thing. The cities, all these cities have an inordinate amount of leverage over the race organizations, because the race organizations, they need to use the streets that the cities control. They need police officers to do security. They need road department workers to put up barricades. They need paramedics. Normally, the government may not have that amount of leverage over a business like a restaurant or something like that, or a bar. The restaurant does not need access to all these miles of street to operate, but the race does. And if the city just sits on its hands and does nothing, there's no race. So if the city says you have to require everyone to be vaccinated, all your participants, all your volunteers, the races can't be like, no way, and then there's no race. So they don't have a choice. So, I mean, New York's been extremely aggressive with vaccine mandates, and I'm not surprised that every New York Roadrunner race will require vaccines. I'm not surprised the Boston Marathon is requiring vaccines, because they depend on the approval of at least 7. I mean, I'm guessing 7, 8, 9 units of government to operate, to have the race. I mean, at least the 7 towns on the course. If just one of them says you got to have a vaccine mandate, they have to have one, or there's no race, or there's a massive rerouting of the course, the historic course. So I'm not surprised. The mayor of Boston has made it clear. She just implemented new vaccine requirements. If you go to a restaurant in Boston, just like New York, you have to show proof of vaccination. Even the kids age 5 and older have to show proof. So, and then Philadelphia was actually the first to do an absolute mandate, no negative test option. And I would be, and I would not be surprised if the other majors have a similar role. I mean, I actually got criticized in Facebook in a Facebook group today. Someone said, "Well, you're just speculating. You're being irresponsible and speculating." And you know what? I think my speculation is speculation, but it's based on something, reasonable basis. I mean, you see, look what's happening around you. So if you're not vaccinated, and that's your choice, I accept that. But that if you sign up for a race, there's a risk that the race, especially if it's in a city where they tend to have vaccination mandates, there's a good chance that race is going to have one. Chicago, I think that's a distinct possibility. The one I thought that might be the holdout might be London, but the government there is talking about vaccine mandates, though they haven't gone as far out as New York and requiring you to have proof of vaccination when you go to a restaurant or a bar. So runners, you have to think about that.
I'm a little bit surprised that London isn't mandating vaccines, because they're so stringent when going into lockdown. Like, they're kind of in a mini lockdown right now. So yeah, I'm running London next year. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, especially with New York. Like, what are their policies going to be? Like, can you register and then show your vaccine information when you pick up your bib? Is it going to be in our dashboard? And they haven't really said how they're going to implement, proving that you are vaccinated. So,
well, we can look at this year. And when you went to the Javits Center, you could show either your card, or you could show an image of your card. Like, there's an app, you just put a picture of your card, you open the app and you show the image of your vaccination card. That's simple as that. I mean, and just a quick aside, yes, those cards are unfortunately easily forged, but if you do it and you're caught, you're facing federal being prosecuted by U.S. prosecutors, a federal offense to forge those cards. So don't even think about doing that to run a race ever, because you're facing time in a federal prison if you do that.
Well, hopefully for New York City, because we have an app, the Excelsior app,
Right.
where we log in, we put our information and it pulls up our vaccination, details. So hopefully for New York residents, they require you to use that Excelsior app and not just the cards. Cause I've seen the forgery of the cards online, and yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I want to get into you. So tell me a little bit about you. Where are you originally from?
Oh gosh. Well, my parents are immigrants from Taiwan, and I was born in Connecticut, and I grew up in Miami. Not many people know about that. I lived in Atlanta
Mm.
for a couple years of high school. I went to Yale University in the early '90s. I'm that old. And I lived in New York City actually for 6 years after college, and then I moved here for a newspaper reporting job in Canton, Ohio, which I'm still at that job. Been here for 20 years. Um, and I started running marathons in 2012. I'd run cross country in high school. I was like back then I could run. I think I ran a 5,000-meter race on a track under 17 minutes once. I can't do that
Wow.
now. Um, but back in the day, I ran a 36-minute 19-second 10K when I was 17 years old. I have not done that since then.
Mhm.
But anyway, so I had some running background, but I didn't run any competitive races for 20 years. And then I was trying
Mhm.
to I'd run recreationally, but didn't do races. I got burned out doing races when I was young, and so I wasn't eager to go back to that. And then in 2011, I was assigned to cover a meeting about a marathon orientation that was taking place at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton. This PR guy, these two PR people were trying to start up the Canton Marathon, and and basically I went to go cover that, and I saw all the roads they're going to use, and I'd always put off doing that, and I was like, man, like I think I could do that. I
Mhm.
saw the map. I run in those places, so I signed up eventually for the marathon. But I only trained for 2 months, and so the result what didn't go very well. I did finish, but I nearly quit like several times during the race. At least later in the race, went out too
Mhm.
fast, made all the mistakes, and then I was like, I'm never doing this again. This is stupid. This is like, why am I doing this? And
We
then
all
like
say that after the first one.
after everyone and or during the and then like a week later I signed up for the Akron Marathon, which is going to be 3 months later, and I actually did better training, and I came close to, and then I signed up for Columbus Marathon, which is the 3 weeks after Akron, and then it just became this thing, and I didn't, and then my it took me about, I don't know, about a year to break 4 hours. And then I broke 320 like about 5 months, I don't know, was it 4 months later, something like that, at the Chicago Marathon 2013. That was my first major. Um, uh, but yeah, I mean, I started with the local races, and I kind of moved up to, and Chicago Marathon in this area is the big race, in the Midwest, it is the race
Mhm.
to do.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that was the last time that you could sign up first come, first served. It was done by active.com, and the server collapsed.
What
Like,
year was that?
you would be signing up, you'd be filling, and then the server would refresh and would kick you out. It happened to me a couple of times. I managed to get to the confirmation page. A lot of people did it. They had to shut
Mhm.
down registration and turn it into a lottery. And since then, the Chicago Marathon has had a lottery, and that was because of that incident in February of 2013.
Oh, 2013.
Yes,
So
that's the last time Chicago Marathon had a first come first serve registration, which didn't work, and that's why they don't have one anymore.
Mhm. So you mentioned that you lived in Atlanta, and I
Right.
athlinked you. I athlink everyone that comes on the show, and I see that
Sure.
you ran the Peachtree Road Race quite a few times, and I was wondering, why is he running the Peachtree Road Race? That's like I run it a few times because I have family in Atlanta. So what makes you keep going back to do that race?
Well, I have family. I have family in Atlanta too. I went to high
Mm-hmm.
school there. I went to Lakeside High School for
Oh.
2 years. Um, Graduated in 1991, and um, and so my family lives there. So I'm there was there to visit them. And that's why I've gone several times. I skipped for a few years. I mean, I ran the race in 1990 and I think 1991.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually in my ATH links.
Mm-hmm.
from 1990. And then I did,
Wait a minute. Athlink is ATH links?
I believe so. That's what I call it. Is how are you supposed to pronounce it?
I thought it was Athlinks.
I have no idea how to pronounce. I just call it ATH links.
ATH links. I have to look how they spell it. I thought it was Athlinks all this time for years.
It could be. Maybe I have it wrong.
ATH links. I'm gonna look that up to see. Interesting.
Right. So so I did 2013 and I skipped a few years and I picked it up in 2017, 18, 19, and the virtual in 20. I did sign up for that because and then 21. But I'm probably, due to finances being tight and because of COVID, I can't just pop in and see my family anymore. So
yeah. You know what? The Peachy Road Race is one of those races that I hate, but I keep coming back to do it. I didn't do it the last 2 years, one because of COVID and the year before that because I didn't like the way, what they did with the lottery and it's a whole big thing. But yeah, it's one of those races that you love to hate because like the Atlanta Hills, of course, everyone hates that, but it is so hot on July 4th in Atlanta. Like you're running and it's like you just got out of the shower because you're like dripping wet. But yeah, we keep coming back to do it. We like the torture. That's what runners do.
Well, like actually this year, it wasn't that hot. It was uncharacteristically cooler than normal on July 4th. But usually, yes, it is a sauna.
And they split it into 2 days this year. So you got to run it on the 4th?
Yes, you got to choose. I chose the 4th. It's the traditional date.
Yeah, of course. So you mentioned that you work for a newspaper, which is kind of shocking to me. I thought that you'd have been like some analytical guy, a math professor, something like that, just from your like extensive posts on Facebook. So what are you a writer at the newspaper? What do you do there?
Yes, I cover local government, I cover county government, and whatever my editors want me to do, basically.
So are your stories as in-depth as your Facebook posts?
My editors, unfortunately, have to suffer through my writing as well.
You are so detailed. Like I sit and read your posts and I'm like, you just mesmerize me a lot of the times. I'm like, how does he come up with these things? He sits there and writes these like diatribes, but they're like so well put together and they make sense. Like you're one of the people on Facebook that I actually read the posts. I usually just scroll by and just hit like or just don't do anything. But your posts, I actually read it because they make sense.
Really?
And they give me useful information.
I get complaints by people all the time that my posts are too long. I get too long, didn't read all the time. I get complaints that if I overpost in one of the running Disney groups, I get messages. Oh, like people are complaining about you. Can you just only do 2 posts a day, please? So there are people who can't stand me either. I mean, but I honestly, I don't plan it out. I mean, there is a little bit of ramble to it. I just write what's up off the top of my head. And I might have to look up some statistics and stuff like that. I don't have an outline or something like that. It's just whatever occurs to me at the time to write. It's like very stream of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to have you on the show because I think that you just know so much about the majors. And there's so many people that have just started running and they see other people running the majors as people that have been around for a long time and maybe they haven't, leveled up to marathons yet. And I thought it'd be good to have you on to give us insight and to help us conquer the goal of getting those 6 stars. So where are you in your 6-star journey? You have all 6, right?
I finished. I got my 6-star medal at the London Marathon in 2019.
Okay. Did you do it once or you have it twice over?
I done it once. I'm only missing the Tokyo Marathon to get the second one, but I have no plans to do Tokyo anytime soon. We're not even sure when it's going to happen next time for non-elites. And the cost is a big barrier. And the other thing too is now it's in early March. It used to be in late February. And if you want to train for Boston, which I do, that's the race I want to do every year. Tokyo is kind of in the way. It's just not the best time of year if you're an April, May type of marathoner, unless you want to do multi marathons. But I think for me, it does negatively impact my performance if I do too many races.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give you my list of the majors in the order that I think from easiest to get into to the most difficult. And you tell
Sure.
me if you agree with
Okay.
me or not. So I think Chicago is the easiest,
Yes, absolutely agree.
then Berlin, London,
Um, yes.
New York City.
Yes. It just depends on, yeah, it depends on some things, but yes.
And I think Boston and Tokyo are like a tie.
Um, I'm sorry, which one?
I think Boston and Tokyo are in a tie of difficulty to get in.
Yes, it's kind of like the knight and the bishop in chess. You know what I mean? There's different
Mhm.
attributes to both. Though you can argue London. It depends. Everyone's situation is different with those top three. So let me see. Chicago's definitely the easiest. The reason why it's the easiest is the lottery probably has the best odds.
Mhm.
Though probably for 2022, it may have been the lowest. In the last several years. But my guess, and Chicago does not release the numbers. My guess is roughly 50% chance of getting in. I think it's been as high as 80. If I had to guess, this is totally guessing, educated based on anecdotal reports, and maybe 45% at worst. I think this year would have been the worst for next year.
You really
So,
think
and
it's
then
that low?
I don't think it's lower than 45. It might be 50, maybe, something like that. I think it's around, I think definitely this for 2022, I think it was definitely the lowest for a long, probably maybe the lowest ever. But it's hard to tell because Chicago never tells us how many lottery slots there are, how many people got in. New York releases that numbers. Chicago does never release those numbers. We don't know. Um,
See, I
so,
used to think that Chicago let basically everybody in.
Oh, are you talking about? Are you talking about March? If you're talking, I'm sorry. If you're talking about not March. I don't know if it was March. Was it March? The lottery for 2021. That is true. Everyone got in. But for 2022, it was the opposite. It might have been. It was definitely. It could. It was no better than 50%. It might have been lower than that. The odds for 2022. The lottery results were announced. I think December 12th. I think.
Mm-hmm. I'm shocked by that. So is it because the field size is smaller for 22?
No, I think it's because people are like, things are getting back to normal. It's safe to come out now. I mean, people entered largely before Omicron, kind of reared its ugly head.
Mm-hmm.
So I, I think that's a lot of it. People are like, oh, it's safe to do races again. Like, it's probably not going to get canceled. I can go ahead and do it. And I think that's kind of what happened. And also, a lot of the spots are being held for people who were deferred from 2020. So
Mm-hmm.
that's another
That
reason,
is true.
as well as anyone who may have deferred from 2021, because they're like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, what if the race is canceled? You know what I mean? Or whatever. Also all the people who could not get into the country to run the race because of the travel ban, they were allowed to defer for free. So those spots had to be held for them. So probably because of that. So a smaller number of lottery spots is probably a likely reason, but we can only speculate.
Yeah. So I got into Chicago on my first try. I think that was like in 2013 or 14. But I used to think because I had one friend that never got into Chicago. I said, they just don't like you. I mean, there's no way after 6 years that you have not gotten into Chicago. He was like the only person. But so I always thought that Chicago had the best odds of getting in because so many people always post that they have gotten into the race. So what do you think about Berlin?
Uh, you need some luck to get into it, but you don't need that much luck. My guess for Berlin is hazier. They don't release numbers either. Okay, they released when they did the first lottery. I think it was around 2012 or 13 or something like that. They did release the numbers. The odds of getting in were about 40% overall.
Mm-hmm.
I also
Mm-hmm.
suspect that they used to have different lottery polls depending on if you were based in Germany or you weren't. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think they're now in the same poll now. So my guess is that the odds are roughly 40% to get in. That's based on unscientific polling. I have no proof because they don't really say.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. Here's the big thing about Berlin. If you don't get in, you have another chance. You can get into the first come first served RTL charity registration, and
That's
that's
how I
where
got in.
1,000 bibs are up for grabs. Usually it's 3 a.m. our time, though I think it
Mm-hmm.
was later this year. I think it was 9 a.m. our time for the last RTL because there's a 6-hour time difference. So
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, like, it's now an online queue. There used to be a way to use this link to get into the registration site and skip the online queue, which we figured out, but they've redone, probably because of what we did to get to it, they've redone the website, so you can't do that anymore. You're
but they raised the price also, right?
I don't remember. I think they did.
Because it used to be like 60 euros. I think that's what I paid way back when.
Well, it's like 60 to 70 euros more than the regular, and that's how I got in 2000. Gosh, it was December 2016 to get in for 2017. There was like a 1 year. It was 2000. It was 2019 again in 2020. So it was, gosh, was it December 2019 where the website just, it was possible. You could get past the queue, but you would get, the system would just it would shut down. Like you couldn't get past, like you could not get to the next page. And it was this matter of pure luck whether you got registered or not. I actually registered a friend of mine, and I was able to get through, but it took multiple. I had to go back and forth in the browser to get it to work. And another woman I know, she didn't get in. Like she was at Disney World and she got up early in the morning to like register. She could not get in.
Wow.
So I mean, the thing is, like, I actually started a group called Berlin Rocket Science, where we discussed how to get in through that method through the RTL charity registration. And it used to be called Berlin Marathon Secrets or Berlin Marathon Registration Secrets. I changed it to Rocket Science because some guy was like, well, getting in that way, it's not rocket science. So
good one.
So, but a lot of the secrets we used, a lot of the tricks we used to use don't work anymore. The people who, the IT people who run that site have figured us out, and they've redone the site to prevent what we do from working anymore.
Of course. Okay, so is there any other way to get into Berlin other than the lottery and the second chance option?
Okay, I mean, and Berlin is great that you have plan B, plan C, plan D. You can't do that with Tokyo, okay? But Berlin, that is one of the great things about it. Another thing is tour operators. There are plenty of packages through tour operators like Marathon Tours, like Fitness International. I think it's Fitness International Travel. And what's the other one? It used to be Marathon Adventures, and it isn't anymore. I think they got replaced by someone else. I forgot right now for some reason. There is someone else. It's not that hard to get a package. They don't sell out immediately. If the first two options fail, you can go with the tour operator. They also have charity entries. Another way to do it, though most people don't do it this way, is to do Berlin Marathon, do the rollerblading race
the day before.
The day before, and then you get an entry for next year as a runner. Another thing they have that's not really well publicized is they have a running camp. If you sign up for the running camp, you can get an entry. I'm not even sure if you have to show up to the running camp. If you're willing to pay the money for it, there's also charity. I don't think the fundraising minimums are even that large. Sorry. So I mean, there's all kinds of options. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? I'm sure there is, and but if you try hard enough and you're persistent, you can do the Berlin Marathon.
Okay, moving on to London.
Right.
So London, I think I have seen a few friends that got in through the lottery, but I know it's like few and far in between, especially if you're trying to get in from America. So how do we get into the London Marathon?
All right. Well, I did the calculations for 2019. I calculated that the odds for a non-UK resident to get in through the ballot, which is what they call the lottery, is about 1.3%. And the way I figured that out was, I don't even know if I should be saying this, but I already said it publicly. London Marathon, they tend to put certain categories of runners in certain bib number ranges. So all the people who got in through the ballot tend to be, who aren't from the UK, tend to be in a certain bib number range. I just had to know some people who had gotten in through the ballot to figure that out. And once you start plugging it in, you may, at least for 2019, you can see a pattern. So I counted up how many people likely got in through the ballot as who are non-UK. And and they had released how many non-UK people had applied for that year. They don't release that anymore. And so I was able to figure it was about 1.3%. Look, I don't think you should count on ever getting in through the ballot. I know people who have this attitude that they have for Chicago and Berlin. Okay, I'm going to keep on trying, and then until I get in. They just end up being bitter and frustrated. The odds of you getting in are not great. The main reason is because there's only one drawing a year. Okay, if there was a drawing every day, then you probably would eventually get an entry even at 1.3%. There's only one drawing a year, and I calculated you can enter 50 years in a row, and it would not be likely you get in. Now there are people who get in. I know a few. Okay, but it's like when the store puts on your receipt, like fill out the survey and be entered into a drawing for a $5,000 gift card. You're probably not going to get it. Okay, now some people will, but you're probably not. Yeah. So don't count on getting in that way. The best way, I think the best way for an American now, we used to have New Balance rewards program. That's not available anymore. Okay.
Oh my God. Do you know, like the last year that they did it, I bought so much New Balance for that year and everyone got hip to the game and I was so mad. I could not get an entry. That was like the last year that they had it. So other than charity, do you think charity is the best way to get into London?
Because because right now for a tour here, it's really difficult to get a tour operator package now. And if you do, you're going to be paying at least $2,500 for that anyway. So, you might as well just raise I think the charity is like $3,000 compared to Boston, where people have to raise $10,000 often. That's much less. I mean, so I think the best option right now, if you're an American, is I've never done the charity entry, but is to raise the $3,000 for that entry. I think that's the best way to do it. I mean, and I think it sounds like I think it's a manageable amount.
Well, I did the charity entry. What was the last one before COVID? 2019. Yeah, because I was supposed to run it in 2020. So I think my charity entry was $2,300.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it wasn't so, but I think they raised it for this year now. I think it's much more than that amount. So
I'm not surprised. Hopefully. A lot of things are obviously going up.
I know, it's crazy. Like they're making people lose hope with these men. We're going to get to Boston and those ridiculous amounts. So let's move on to New York City. So I know I'm a New Yorker, so I've done 9+1 plenty of times and I've gotten in that way. So how do people that don't live in New York City get into the New York City Marathon?
There used to be, again, we used to have New Balance rewards. That used to be the easiest way, actually. They don't have that anymore now. So I think that if you cannot time qualify, then I think that you should enter the lottery, and if you don't get into the lottery, then do charity. And I think it's about $3,000 for Team for Kids,
which is not bad compared to other charities. So charity is a way to go for New York City,
right? I mean, the other alternative is I'll give you an example. Like I once had a friend whose friend's son was an intern at New York Roadrunners, and he got me an entry back in 2017. So that's like another example, but I don't know that. Now here's the thing, they did not have that program. My understanding is they did not have that program this year. That was not available. Well,
there is another way to get in.
Yeah.
You want to know? I'm surprised you don't know this.
Michelob Ultra Team?
No.
Marathon Tours?
No.
VIP package?
No.
9+1. You already touched the topic.
Wait, I know something that Robert Wang doesn't know.
Oh yeah, the virtual. Right?
No.
Not the virtual.
No. Okay, I'm going to tell you. Tell you. So New York Roadrunners has running clubs. They have hundreds of clubs, and clubs get marathon entries. They get 4 marathon entries per year. So if you know someone, if you know someone that has a New York City club and they have entries available, you can join their club and ask them for an entry.
I did not know that.
Don't tell everyone. Everyone listening to this podcast, don't call me and ask me for an entry. But yes.
Well, I know a police officer, who got an entry through the New York Police Department Union, like the benevolent association.
NYPD does get entries and a
right.
special tent at the start line as well. So if you know someone in the NYPD, that's a great way to get in. But yeah, a lot of New York companies get entries as well. So there are a lot of ways to get into the New York City Marathon, but a club entry is a way to go if you know someone that has a New York Road Runners Club.
I know a teacher, there was so many bibs that went to teachers, and she got it that way. I think they were like giving one bib for one teacher per school, and she was the only marathon runner in the school. So, or one of the few. And so she got one that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's always, even for Boston, there's always a way in. If you know someone, you can get into these races. You just have to act like you're applying for a job and use your resources to get a spot, because it is possible.
It is, but Boston is a tougher one to get on your own initiative, outside of the charity and outside of time qualifying. The people who tend to get entries that way, they either are big time celebrities like Jimmy Johnson or Danica Patrick or someone like that, or they just happen to stumble upon it. Like there was a contest or something like that, or they happen to have a good conversation with a Boston Athletic Association member on the bus or something, or a subway train. I mean, it's something like, I know one guy, he got contacted by a sponsor. I'm not going to say which one, not to put him in a, because I don't think, but a sponsor contacts him for the race and say, hey, we want you on our team. We know you barely made the cut. We want to add you to our, and that's how he just got contacted. He didn't try to do anything.
It happens. There's always a way. So speaking of Boston, why are the fundraising minimums so high? Like, what is so special about Boston? Because I've been to Boston, and it's like, it's a city that I don't want to revisit. So what is the big hoopla of Boston? I don't get it.
I guess you're not a Boston Red Sox fan either, obviously.
No, I went to Boston, and it was probably I ran a half marathon in Boston. It was probably one of the worst cities that I've ever visited. There's like nothing. I didn't like it. So what is the big deal about Boston? Tell me.
You better be careful about your Beantown audience. Okay. First of all, I think there's only, and I could be off on the numbers, but I don't think there's usually about, I think 3,500 charity entries. That is not that many compared to other races. The challenge with Boston is that it's the smallest major because it has the least amount of capacity. And the big reason that is because it starts on a 2-lane road in a small Massachusetts, greater Boston, Massachusetts town. It's a great town, but it's a 2-lane road. I mean, it's not the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. It's not like, how many lanes is that? It's got to be 8 lanes or more. It's not,
and it's up and down. Yeah.
It's not Pier Garden. It's not Shinjuku. I mean, London is probably the next narrowest, but they start in 3 different locations in London for that reason. Boston has a field size of 30,000. That's the smallest. I think the next major after that is Tokyo. I mean, I'm not looking at the 2021 field. Look, the normal field sizes before the pandemic. Boston is the smallest. And because of that, there's fewer bibs to raise as much money. So a charity, can raise the same or maybe more money with because they have more runners. They can have fundraising minimums of $3,000, $5,000. They'll raise because they have more people who can run the race. Boston doesn't have the space to accommodate more than so many charity runners. I think it's 3,500, maybe 4,000 tops. And because of that, each of the runner has to raise more money to make up for that.
So does Boston get a kickback from the charities? Like because they don't accept a lot of charities into their program. So I just don't get it. I need you to explain it to me. Like what does Boston get out of allowing charities to have the minimum so high? Because for some people it's unreachable. Like, you know how hard it is to raise $2,500, and some charities want you to raise $10,000. Right. Like, where do they get the audacity to ask for these numbers?
Because people are willing to sign up for the bibs under those conditions. I mean, it's like if I want to sell this tape measure for $100 and someone's willing to give it to me, it's worth $100. I mean, it's whatever the market will bear. Like, does anyone want Robert Wang's tape measure for $100? I mean, I mean,
So do
probably
the charities,
okay.
do they really ding people if they don't raise that amount? Do they really come after them for the balance?
That's what that's what the contract says. If you don't raise the money, and then they'll charge your credit card that amount. I
Because I
mean,
know for a fact people that have done charity for Berlin, for London, that did not raise their minimum. I know for a fact that they were not charged.
I don't know that. I don't know how much of it is if they threaten to do it and then maybe they do it, maybe they don't. I haven't had. I've never had community. No one's ever told me, oh yeah, I failed to make the minimum and they charged me $6,000. I mean, there's probably a little bit of a, I don't know what to call it. I mean, shame element. Like you feel you made an obligation, so you might feel inclined to pay the difference yourself. You know what I mean? If you're short. That might be what ends up happening in many situations. You know, like I didn't have time, so yeah, I'll just put 3,000 my own money in. Yeah, I thought I was going to raise it, didn't have to, ran out of time. I mean, I'm speculating. I don't know. You know, I mean, and chances are no one's going to tell me. No one's going to be like, well, I only raised half the money, and so I paid the rest of it. I mean, some people may not feel proud about that for whatever reason. But here's the thing: a big myth. I think this is a myth. I don't know for sure. But I suspect what a myth is. The people who are buying themselves into the race. You know what I mean? Like they're well-to-do people writing a check for $10,000, and then boom, they have a Boston Marathon bib. I mean, maybe there's a couple situations like that. I don't think it happens as commonly as people think it does. I mean, there's a culture of you go find people to raise this money. It's you know, it's not like just everyone writes a check for themselves type deal, like Tokyo, which is basically Tokyo. So it's high because there are people who have they can use employer matching. They have the network of people with the income. It's not a big deal to give them $100 or something like that, or $50. I mean, and then some of them do the Super Bowl squares, or they sell baked goods at the supermarket. The other thing too is a lot of the charity runners are based in Boston. Okay. They're based in the Boston area. And that's one big reason why I think the race continues to have support, because everyone knows people who are raising money for the race. A lot of runners who are time qualifiers, they don't understand that. They're like, only people who run fast enough should get in the race. Well, you know what? If that was their attitude, it'd be harder, I think, for the race to get permits from the towns. The people who run the towns, they know people, charity runners who run the race. It's part of the goodwill. It's part of being part of the community. And almost all those charities are based in Boston. I think almost all of them are. I mean,
why do you say Boston like you're from Boston?
I don't know. I just said it. I'm not from Boston. Actually, I was born in Hartford, Connecticut, but I moved when I was 4 to Florida. So
you've adapted the Boston accent.
I'm not even there most of the time. I'm only usually there 4 days of a year, and I don't qualify to get in some years. So
okay, so let's move on to Tokyo. And I've been telling my friends, like, we should probably stop running the majors because we're never going to get into Tokyo. So how the heck do we get into Tokyo?
I think Tokyo is very easy, actually, believe it or not. If you can get past the registration system. Prior to 2019 was the last year you could do this. You could, with about $1,100, you could get an entry. If you're willing to donate basically a little less than $1,000 to a charity by the Tokyo Marathon. But they were set to get rid of that system. They were going to get rid of it for 2020. They were going to double the contribution to like 1,800 yen, which is about 200,000 yen, which is about $2,300. I'm sorry, $1,800. Excuse me, $1,800. So, and they were going to have you apply to the charities directly, which is more like the model that other majors have with their charities. So you basically go, you choose a charity, you apply, you say, hey, I want a charity entry, and they're like, okay, 200,000 yen. I mean, though I don't know, they may ask for more, but that's about $1,800. And if you have the money, if you have $2,000, you probably can get an entry that way. You're just going to have to figure out, because they never really implemented this system, okay? Because obviously because of the pandemic. So we don't know how it's going to shake out. We don't know when the program's going to come back. They've suspended it, which I was surprised. The charities really do need the money in Japan. But I bet the program comes back, and that will be the best way to get in. But here's the thing: the lottery isn't horrible. It's not the worst I've ever seen. I suspect that that they admit a higher percentage of people not from Japan than people from Japan. I think the overall percentage is about 8%. But I've seen, according to the polling, I mean, and it's unscientific, but I think it's between 10 and 20% for a non-Japan resident. I think they have 2 separate drawings that they have. So if you want to enter the lottery every year, you have a decent shot of eventually getting in. I mean, but here's the problem with this method is you cannot, because the lottery entry is later than the charity entry, you can't be like, okay, I want to try to get in the lottery. If I don't, I can do the charity. No, you can't do that. You have to make a decision for that year. So the charity registration is done by then.
But you can also get in through marathon tours, right? Or do you have to be in their club?
You have to join their club, but there's like this long waiting list. It's by it's basically by, you know, how many packages you book through them and loyalty, like how many years you've been in the club. And you know, the cutoff for that, who knows where it is? I'm not even sure where it is. But that's a very difficult, and it's also it's pretty expensive. It's going to cost. I mean, people who've done it love it. You know, you get to stay in a really nice hotel and get these nice meals, and you get these amenities. But it's going to cost more than whatever money you're going to give to the charity.
I remember years ago when it was $3,500, and I said, I'm not paying $3,500 for that. And I should have years ago, because it's probably way more now and just much more harder to get in. So in hindsight, looking back, I probably should have did it back then, and I would have Tokyo under my belt. But
you could have spent $1,100 for the entry itself, and maybe stayed at a business hotel for like $800. So you're going to be there for like 11 days, and it would have cost you maybe $2,000. And not including the flight. The flight would have added it, so it might have been under $3,000 with the flight. Here's the thing about the charity. Their charity program's kind of weird because they require you to give them the money before they give you an entry. The other majors don't do that. They trust. Okay, here's an entry. You raise the money. What?
That is strange.
Yes. Originally, the plan was, if you looked at the way their website was, you know, set up, they wanted you to set up a fundraising page and raise the money from people and raise money, just like a charity program. But here's the thing, until you raise the money, you didn't have the bid, okay? So what people would be like, well, it's only $1,100. I'll front the money myself, right? And then people were like, it basically became a first come, first serve registration where the bid costs $1,100. I mean, I hate to say that because I hate to say this, but no one's gonna go around and be like, okay, I paid $1,100, reimburse me, give the money to me. People don't feel, they don't feel good about asking people to reimburse them for a payment that they made, right? Versus just paying a fundraising page directly. They had a fundraising page, but it didn't work because you didn't get the bid until you raised the money. And who's going to do that in like 2 hours?
Yeah. Interesting. Well, Mr. Robert Wang, I want to thank you for being on the Runway podcast. You are a wealth of information. And if you haven't already done so, people, make sure you join the World Marathon Majors group on Facebook. There's 17,000 members in that group. And how long has the group been active?
It's been active. Oh, well, we just, you know what, the anniversary happened. I didn't even say anything about it, but we've had it. Oh gosh, we just had the 5th year anniversary, and that was like 11 days ago, and I forgot to note it. But it started December 16th of 2016.
Wow. So if you're running the majors, definitely join the group. I don't post in the group, but I read and I take in the knowledge. And when I have a question about the majors, I go to the group and search the group. So it's a wealth of knowledge if you're on this path to run the World Marathon Majors. So tell everyone where they can find you on socials if they want to connect with you.
Well, Facebook, it's Robert Wang, W-A-N-G. Make sure it's a common name. There's many Robert Wangs, and then
put the link to his page in the show notes.
Just type World Marathon Majors Challenge. I think I'm also Mr. Media Man on Facebook. I'm not active on Twitter personally. I think Facebook's like the only thing I'm active on. But I have several groups. But the World Marathon Majors Challenge group is the biggest one. It's got 17,880 some people. It hasn't grown
that number,
pandemic, but if you want to come and add yourself, come and you're willing to see my frequent long posts, then you're welcome.
They're well worth the read because you answer all the questions that people want to know. You answer them before we can ask them. So
Well,
thank you.
that's what I was trying to do as a writer. It drives my bosses crazy. They really don't want me writing that long.
I like to read it on my downtime. I read your posts.
Right.
So again, thank you for being on the Runway podcast. I will put all of Robert's information down below so you can join the group and connect with. Are you on Instagram?
Not really. I have my handle there is yes, that Robert Wang. But I've never used Instagram. I think I posted one picture of my cat, and I think that's it.
Okay, so we're not going to put his Instagram. So go find him on Facebook and connect with Robert and the group and just get your knowledge on about the World Marathon Majors. So thank you again for being on the podcast.
Great. Thanks, Kimberly. It was good to be on.
All right. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Mr. Robert Wang, Mr. World Marathon Major. I will leave all of his details down below so you can connect with him and leave the Facebook group below as well. So if you're chasing World Majors, you definitely want to join that group. You don't have to participate. You can just read the post, search the group. There's so much information on that group that is valuable to anyone that is running the World Majors. So I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Runway Podcast, and I will catch y'all on the next one. Later. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Runwave. If you are a runner that has a story to tell, feel free to email hello@therunwave.com or shoot me a DM on Instagram at The Runwave. Don't forget to follow The Runwave on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We are The Runwave on all platforms. Subscribe to our email list. It is listed down below in the notes of this show. And subscribe to The Runwave on YouTube. The visual episode of this show will be posted there.